My name is Evelyn Carter. I'm 58 years old, live alone in a small apartment in Glendale, and I've been cleaning other people's homes for the last 15 years. I wasn't always a cleaning lady. Once upon a time, I was Mrs. Thomas Carter, wife of a successful financial advisor, mother to 2 bright children, and the woman who held the household together like clockwork. But that was a long time ago. Last month, out of the blue, I received a text message from my son, Brandon. It simply read, "Mom, I'm hosting a dinner party for my birthday next weekend. Can you come? Saturday at 7. Brandon hadn't invited me to anything in years. His birthday celebrations usually happen in Aspen, or Cabo, or some luxury resort I couldn't pronounce, much less afford. I always sent a card with a modest gift tucked inside, a gesture rarely acknowledged. But this invitation was different. I texted back right away, "I'd love to. What should I bring?" He replied, "Just yourself. 124 Mulholland Drive." Of course, Brandon and his wife Amber had recently bought a home in the Hollywood Hills. I had only seen pictures on Instagram, sleek glass walls, sharp lines, and million-dollar views of the city below. It was the kind of house I'd cleaned before, but never stepped into as a guest. All week, I worried about what to wear, how to act. I settled on a simple black dress I once wore to a client's funeral. It was the nicest thing I owned. I had my hair trimmed and styled at the mall, nothing fancy. I even bought a small gift, a silver frame I found at a vintage shop, and inside it, a photo of Brandon as a boy, building sandcastles at the beach. It had always been his happiest place. On Saturday, I took the bus as far as I could, then called a rideshare to take me the rest of the way up the winding hills. The driver eyed me suspiciously as we passed rows of luxury homes. "Big party?" he asked. I smiled softly. "It's my son's birthday. He lives here." The house was even more extravagant, in-person floor-to-ceiling windows, designer landscaping, and a long circular driveway filled with expensive cars. I barely had time to catch my breath when the front door swung open. There stood Brandon, tall, poised, dressed in a navy suit that made him look like his father. "Mom," he said, his voice unreadable, "you made it." I stepped forward to hug him, but he didn't return the gesture. Instead, he moved aside and motioned for me to come in. "Everyone's out by the pool," he said. "Everyone?" I asked, suddenly nervous. He nodded. "Just a few friends from work, Amber's family, Dad and Heather too." I swallowed hard. I hadn't seen Thomas or his new wife in years, not since Sophie's wedding, where they sat at the head table while I was tucked near the kitchen with distant relatives. I forced a smile. "Oh, that's nice. I didn't know they'd be here." Brandon shrugged. "Dad helped with the down payment on the house. He wanted to see it." Of course he did. Of course they all did. But no one had thought to ask what I wanted or how I'd feel. Not even my son. Walking through Brandon's house felt like stepping into another world. Modern furniture, abstract art on the walls, ceilings so high they seemed to scrape the sky. I followed him past polished marble floors and glass staircases, my sensible shoes clicking faintly beneath me. I couldn't help but remember the life I used to live. I met Thomas Carter when I was 19, waiting tables while taking classes at community college. He was charming, well-dressed, and 10 years older. When he proposed just 6 months later, I thought I'd been rescued from a life of exhaustion and low tips. We married quickly. 1 year later, Brandon was born. 2 years after that, Sophie arrived. For almost 2 decades, I was the woman behind the man, the planner, the caretaker, the host of every dinner party, every PTA meeting, every family photo. I put aside my own dreams of finishing school, of working in nonprofit advocacy, because someone had to hold the family together. And I was good at it. I thought Thomas appreciated it. I thought the kids felt safe because of it. Then, one afternoon, he came home and told me he was leaving. There was someone else. Someone younger. Someone who made him feel alive again. He moved out the next day. I wasn't just heartbroken, I was blindsided. The house, the car, the savings account Thomas had protected himself with the help of his expensive lawyer. Mine, provided through a low-cost referral, was no match. The settlement was brutal. Child support barely covered groceries, and alimony was gone before I could exhale. I was 43, with no degree, no recent work history, and 2 teenagers who blamed me for driving Dad away. "You let yourself go," Sophie once spat during an argument. No wonder he left. I weighed the same as I did on our wedding day, but Thomas had rewritten the story, and my children believed his version. I found a job cleaning houses through an agency. The work was hard, the hours long, but it paid enough to keep us in the school district. Over time, I built my own list of private clients. Some of the houses I cleaned belonged to old acquaintances, women who used to invite me to charity luncheons when I was Miss Carter. Now they left core lists on marble counters and called me Evelyn like I was the help. Brandon got into UCLA on a scholarship. Sophie went to a private marketing school in Chicago. Both married well. Both built successful careers. And both drifted further and further away from me. Now, they rarely call unless they need something. Meanwhile, I live in a modest one-bedroom. Everything I own has a story: a lamp from a thrift store, a chair from an estate sale, a bookshelf I built myself. It's not much. But it's mine. And no one can take it from me again. The backyard was filled with the sound of soft jazz and clinking glasses. About 20 guests mingled around the infinity pool, holding flutes of champagne and laughing in their sleek, cocktail attire. The city of Los Angeles sparkled beneath us like a postcard. I stood there for a moment, gripping the small gift bag, unsure where to go. Amber, Brandon's wife, waved from across the pool. She was elegant as ever in a red designer dress that fit like a glove. "Evelyn, what a surprise," she said, kissing my cheek lightly. "A surprise?" I asked. "Brandon didn't tell you I was coming." She smiled, a little too tight. "Of course he did." I handed Brandon the gift. "Happy birthday, sweetheart." He took it without opening it. "Thanks, Mom. I'll put this inside." He was already turning away before I could say anything else. I searched the crowd for Sophie, but she wasn't there. I hadn't seen her in months. She'd canceled our last 3 lunch dates, work, her husband's family, or a last-minute cold. I sipped the glass of wine Brandon had handed me, trying to keep my hands from shaking. I stood alone on the edge of the terrace, pretending to admire the view. The city lights were stunning, but they didn't warm the hollow feeling in my chest. Henry appeared behind me, just as polished as ever, his silver hair gleaming under the terrace lights. "Evelyn," he said, his voice still low and smooth, "you look well." "So do you," I replied. Then came Heather, his wife of 15 years. She smiled with the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. "Still working with the cleaning company?" I nodded. "Yes, business is steady." There was a pause, awkward and thick. I asked about Sophie. "They're in Paris this week," Brandon replied casually, "joining us again. Fashion week. Work stuff." "Paris?" Sophie hadn't mentioned Paris when she canceled our lunch the week before. My throat tightened, but I forced myself to smile. That's wonderful for her. I wanted to leave. I didn't belong in this world. Their laughter sounded different now, more brittle, more hollow. The language of wealth had changed my children, shaped them into strangers. To them, I wasn't a mother anymore. I was a memory they didn't want to frame. I finished my wine quietly, standing like an ornament no one had asked for. And I waited just long enough to be polite before slipping away into the house, looking for a bathroom. Looking for a moment alone to breathe. The hallway was silent, cooled by central air and the absence of welcome. I wandered slowly, careful not to disturb anything, until I came across what looked like a home office. It was minimalist: glass desk, leather chair, a few tasteful sculptures. Everything in this room had a price tag I couldn't begin to afford. I was about to turn away when I noticed a framed photo on the desk. I picked it up, expecting to see a family picture, perhaps even the beach photo I'd gifted him earlier. But no. The frame held an image of Brandon, Sophie, Henry, and Heather posing beside a lavish Christmas tree. They looked perfect, polished, complete. I wasn't in it. My hands trembled as I set the photo back down. The message was clear: I wasn't part of the family they wanted to remember. I heard voices coming down the hallway and stepped out, nearly colliding with a group of young men. Brandon's friends, I guessed. "Sorry," I mumbled, trying to move past. One of them glanced at me and turned to Brandon, who had just joined them. "Is this your mom, the one you told us about?" Brandon's smile stiffened. "Yeah," he said. "This is my mother, Evelyn." I extended my hand. "Nice to meet you." The young man shook it, his grip too strong. "Brandon's told us about your cleaning business. Very entrepreneurial." Brandon forced a laugh. "She's been at it for years." "What's it like?" one asked. "Cleaning for the rich and famous?" Before I could answer, Brandon cut in. She doesn't clean for celebrities or anything, just regular houses. I found my voice. Actually, many of my clients are fairly well known. I've been in more Hollywood homes than some executives. Brandon's face darkened. Mom, don't exaggerate. I'm not, I said evenly. I've built a business that supports me. That's something to be proud of. His friend tried to laugh it off. My mom's an accountant. Boring as hell. There's nothing boring about honest work, I said. Brandon's voice dropped, just loud enough for them to hear. She cleans because she never finished college. She doesn't have many options. His words hit me like a slap. I clean, I said, my tone sharpening, because when your father left us with nothing, I had to find a way to keep you and your sister in school. I clean because it let me be present when you needed me. I clean because it's honest work, and I do it well. The silence was painful. Can we not do this now? Brandon hissed. It's my birthday. Yes, I replied softly, and I've felt unwelcome since I walked in the door. And just like that, the dam inside me cracked. Not out of anger, but clarity. I turned, walked past the infinity pool, past Amber and her picture-perfect guests, and left. No one tried to stop me. Outside Brandon's gate, I stood on the sidewalk with my purse clutched tightly, the city sprawling behind me. The house glowed like a monument to everything I'd once lost. I called a rideshare, slid into the backseat, and turned off my phone as it buzzed with texts. I didn't need apologies. I didn't want explanations. At home, I kicked off my shoes and poured myself a glass of wine. My apartment was small, but it was peaceful, filled with things I chose, not things I settled for. And that night, I decided something. For 15 years, I'd held onto a truth so heavy it warped my spine, kept me silent, kept me sacrificing. But not anymore. I went to the bookshelf and pulled out a small folder tucked inside a hollowed cookbook. Its inside was a name and a number I hadn't dialed in over a decade. I memorized it once just in case I ever got brave enough. And now I was. The man who answered the phone had a voice like stone. Worthington, he said. Mr. Worthington, it's Evelyn Carter. I think it's time we had that conversation. He didn't hesitate. Come by my office tomorrow morning. Lawrence Worthington was my ex-husband's former business partner. Years ago, before everything fell apart, Thomas and Worthington built a financial firm together. But when federal investigations started sniffing around, Thomas sacrificed Worthington's reputation to protect himself. Worthington had reached out to me quietly after the divorce, told me he had evidence proof that Thomas had hidden over $7 million in offshore accounts during our marriage. Money he should have disclosed in the settlement. I refused to use it. I thought protecting Brandon and Sophie from scandal was more important. I thought if I stayed silent, I was being noble. But silence hadn't bought me dignity. It had only bought their contempt. The next day, Worthington's office was everything I imagined: polished wood, leather chairs, a view of the city like a movie backdrop. I kept everything, he said, sliding a thick folder across the table. The documentation, the account numbers, he never knew I found them. I opened the folder. It was all there. Wire transfers, shell companies, statements from banks I'd never heard of. $7 million, and then some. Money Thomas had stolen. Money I'd scrubbed baseboards and toilets without. What do you want to do? Worthington asked. I closed the folder. My voice was calm, clear. I want justice. Not just for me, but for the version of myself I buried 15 years ago. That night, I slept deeper than I had in years. Because secrets rot your soul when they sit too long in silence. And mine was finally ready to speak. The following week, I called in sick to my cleaning jobs, a first in 15 years. I had work to do, but this time, it was for myself. I walked into the office of attorney Mitchell Crane, a man whose reputation preceded him. His floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Century City, and the leather chairs in his waiting room probably cost more than my entire apartment. I paid his consultation fee in cash. Then I handed him the folder. He skimmed the document slowly, his expression sharpening. Mrs. Carter, he said finally, you have a strong case. Divorce fraud, especially in California, can reopen a settlement at any time if you can prove concealed assets. I can, I said. That's what this is. He nodded. You could be entitled to half the value of those accounts plus penalties. And if we go further, perhaps a portion of all assets he acquired since then: property, business equity, even the Malibu vacation home. I want all of it, I said, everything that was mine before he buried it. Are you prepared for the fight? Because this won't be quiet. He'll come after you with everything he has. I smiled. I've spent 15 years cleaning other people's messes. I'm not afraid of dirt. Later that afternoon, I sat across from Jessica Kwan at a small cafe in Venice Beach. She was an investigative journalist for the Los Angeles Times, known for unearthing white-collar corruption. I've been waiting for this story, she said, eyes fixed on the folder. I tried chasing it years ago, but it got buried. Not anymore, I said. I explained everything: how I'd stayed silent, why I was done protecting a man who'd built his fortune on lies. She promised a thorough investigation and not a word printed until every detail was verified. It would take weeks. I was willing to wait. By the third day of silence, my phone was buzzing nonstop. Brandon called, Sophie texted. I didn't answer. On the fourth day, Sophie was waiting outside my apartment. Mom, she said, rushing up to me. Where have you been? We were worried sick. She pushed past me into the apartment, her eyes scanning my small space like she didn't recognize it or me. You just disappeared, she said. Brandon said you walked out of his party, and then you wouldn't answer any of our calls. I set my purse and the folder on the table. Something did happen, I told her calmly. I woke up. Sophie blinked. Is this about what Brandon said? He didn't mean. He meant every word, I interrupted. And so did you, in your own way, for years. Her face flushed. That's not fair. No, I said. What's not fair is everything I gave up so you could succeed, only to be treated like an embarrassment. She sat, stunned. I stood unshaken. Your father destroyed this family, I told her. I'm just finally telling the truth. And for the first time, Sophie had nothing to say. 3 days later, the Los Angeles Times published Jessica Kwan's expose. The headline hit hard. Former financial advisor hid millions from ex-wife during divorce, documents reveal. There, in the third paragraph, was my name, Evelyn Carter, the ex-wife who had finally come forward with the truth. The article was thorough, damning, and precise. Jessica had traced the hidden accounts, verified the transfers, and spoken with former clients who suspected they'd been defrauded. It also detailed how Thomas Carter's former business partner, Lawrence Worthington, had taken the fall for crimes he hadn't committed. The fallout was immediate. Thomas's clients began pulling out. The firm issued a press release, and his lawyers scrambled. That same morning, my attorney called. Thomas's legal team is offering a settlement, he said. $3 million, and a promise to make it go away quietly. I laughed. Tell them I want half of everything plus 15 years worth of lost dignity. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine and stepped onto my small balcony. My city shimmered in the distance. A message from Brandon came through. Mom, my job is on the line. Please call me. One from Sophie followed. Jacob's parents don't want to proceed with the baby shower because of the article. Please, we need to talk. I didn't reply. Instead, I stood alone in the night air, breathing deeply. For the first time in years, I wasn't the one cleaning up someone else's mess. I was standing in the middle of my own life. And I wasn't ashamed of a single inch of it. Justice had taken its time. But now it had arrived cold, clear, and long overdue. And it had my name written all over it. If this story resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to reclaim their voice. Subscribe for more true life stories where silence ends and truth begins.